Welcome, we're joined by Siranush Sahakyan, one of the lawyers representing the families of Armenian POWs. Siranush, thank you very much for your time. So it's been 4 months now since the Second Karabakh War ended, and there's still a large group of Armenian POWs still being held captive in Azerbaijan. We have repeatedly heard that the safe return of these captives is a major government priority, but progress has been grueling. So I want to ask, how do you see the situation 4 months on, and what do you think about the government's handling of the POWs issue?
Of course, there is a progress, however very slow. There is an international obligation to repatriate immediately all prisoners of war, hostages and civilians after cessation of hostilities. So we have cessation of hostilities, however, no immediate steps are being taken. And usually international standards probably justify up to 2 months delays due to organizational and identification matters. However, 4 months, it's too late. And there is also a rule that unjustified delays in repatriating POWs is a war crime, and there is a need for response. We see insufficiency of actions from government, both in terms of pursuing legal causes for such war crimes and also exerting all political and diplomatic pressure to make Azerbaijan compliant. We have half steps, but not a complete strategy to ensure repatriation of Armenian captives.
And an interstate application was submitted to the European Court of Human Rights, as well as numerous individual applications against Azerbaijan. Can you tell us a bit about this process, and can you give us any update about this?
We have symmetry in terms of interstate claims, because there is an interstate claim Armenia versus Azerbaijan, but also Azerbaijan versus Armenia. And there are individual cases against Azerbaijan. The scope of interstate claim is quite wide. It covers deaths among civilians, wounded people, targeting civilian infrastructure, mutilation, torturing, treatment with POWs, also displacement, loss of property and more. So the government, through interstate claims, brings some more broader human rights violations issues compared to individual cases where we have a very specific fact-specific individual behind our cases. In both proceedings, European Court of Human Rights applied interim measures in order to prevent harm to human beings due to acceleration of processes, so their lives and physical integrity is under protection. Meantime, Azerbaijan is not fully compliant with interim measure orders, and it does not provide full information about whereabouts of captives, their health conditions, treatment and more. This information sometimes happens to be inaccurate. They fail to acknowledge POWs. Considering this situation, we as a legal team, together with representatives' office, frequently send letters to the court requesting notification of the issue to the Committee of Ministers. We expect a positive steps from the court, and if situation is referred to Committee of Ministers, then we might expect political pressure from Committee of Ministers. Well, we consider that this situation is beyond legal resolution, so it is highly politicized. So we cannot leave alone the court as a legal instance, and we need the support of political bodies of this institution to make Azerbaijan compliant with all these issues.
And you've said in the past there may be as many as 200 captives in Azerbaijan, but the High Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs, Zare Sinanyan, said it is just above 100. And then the spokeswoman of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, has stated that the numbers seem to keep changing in Yerevan. So I was wondering why you think this is happening, why we are hearing different figures.
Changing numbers is normal because we are studying individual circumstances, and based on fact-finding we infer on captivity or not. And this situation is due to the fact that in the negotiations, while agreeing on exchange of all captives and hostages, no mechanism was introduced to exchange the existing lists of people being kept in Azerbaijan or in Armenia. And information on Armenian captives is primarily on the exclusive knowledge of Azerbaijan, because all events happened under the control of Azerbaijan, so Armenian side cannot possess full information. So we could have had a list unchanged if such commitment was undertaken during the negotiation and both parties agreed to disclose such list. But this didn't happen, and now we try to create lists by studying individual circumstances, and over time we get access to more information, so we make modification in the lists. So this is normal, but in terms of significant differences in number is not very ordinary, and makes confusion among families as well. Different parties use different sources of data and methodology, but I can assure that the numbers are telling, so the numbers which we have provided are verified. At this moment we have around 250 cases before the European Court of Human Rights, so definitely the number of captives is more than 100. We have around 70 repatriated captives, and also we have officially confirmed captives around 70 which are still kept in Azerbaijan. So if we sum, the number is already at this point confirmed 140, but we have evidence supporting captivity of more than 100 people. So I would say that this number fluctuating from 230 is 200 to 300 is more accurate.
And do you think the reason why the Armenian government hasn't given a concrete figure is because they really don't know how many captives are in Azerbaijan, or do you think it's a different reason perhaps?
Two reasons exist. First, they don't possess verified information. There is a risk of miscommunication, blames and criticism, so they avoid publicizing any data which can be modified meantime. So lack of information is the objective factor, but there is also a subjective factor. This issue is very emotional, and by ensuring non-disclosure of information, these moods can be well controlled.
And can you tell us a bit about the conditions these captives and POWs are facing in Azerbaijan? Maral Najarian, the Lebanese Armenian woman who was captured in Shushi, was released yesterday. Have you spoken to any of them? Do you know about the conditions they face when in Azerbaijan?
Usually we interview all repatriated captives. And we create new evidence which will be used in court proceedings. We follow certain procedural rules and regulations, and we collect witness statements. and they detail all conditions. We can confirm that there is a systemic torture, inhuman and degrading treatment. The conditions, detention conditions, were not in line with international standards, starting from food, hygiene, treatment, and more. We don't specifically address each and every POWs because of their security, at least publicly, but we use this data for court proceedings, and will soon report on trends of treatment with Armenian prisoners in Azerbaijan. The issue is sensitive. The issue can be used to retaliate those prisoners who are still in Azerbaijan. So we have certain tactical consideration, but we have collected this information, and it will become so we'll publicize them.
But maltreatment can be confirmed, at least, in terms of what information has been gathered so far. Beatings,
other physical and psychological inflictions, poor conditions, hygiene, and everything. So we can speak about classic examples of torture.
And do you know if the Red Cross has been able to visit the POWs and captives in Azerbaijan currently?
Situations are different. So ICRC was granted access to limited prisoners. However, in majority of cases, those prisoners remained unattended by ICRC, or they were even repatriated without having a single visit by ICRC. Some of them were visited by Russians before their repatriation. The general practice is not to allow access to ICRC. Even in those cases when access was granted, it was after a month, 40 or 50 days. So we don't have many cases when immediately an access to ICRC was provided, which additionally confirms our conclusion that all those persons were tortured, heavily beaten with visible traces of torture. So access to independent mechanism was denied in order to conceal the traces of those crimes.
And in your opinion, why is Azerbaijan holding on to so many captives for so long? Do you think they're being used as perhaps bargaining chips in the negotiation processes going on?
Azerbaijan has an anti-Armenian policy, so discriminating and causing mental and other sufferings to Armenians is a part of state policy. So we should locate this conduct in a more broader picture. So the motives are linked with anti-Armenian policy. But I don't think that the war is over, and psychologically they want to gain prevalence over Armenians, and playing with emotional moods of society is a forceful instrument in the hands of Azerbaijan. So this psychological aspect is there, and I also see that not all issues on political agenda are resolved, and Azerbaijan tries to interlink consensus on political issues with humanitarian aspects and tries to bargain with the matter.
And finally, international pressure has been increasing. Well, first off, do you think it has been increasing, and do you think this issue is likely to be resolved in the near future?
There is a pressure, but not an adequate one, and also delayed one, which is also due to geopolitics. There is a conflicting interest of Russia and West also in this region, and there are many calculations between international interventions, even on humanitarian matter. But after quite long delay, now we see a progress. But again, if we compare this situation with other conflicts in the region, for example, Georgia versus Russia, then we see a huge difference. In case of Georgia versus Russia, all organizations publicly condemned and urged the parties to perform the processes so quickly. Even we had Council of Europe Human Rights Commissioner leading the processes, a very active role of European Union and more. And from previous examples, we see the engagement of United Nations Security Council in Western Sahara, for example, UN General Assembly. So we see that there are lots of instances whose mandate includes humanitarian issues, and they have the powers, authorization to get engaged in such matters, but they are delaying. However, we see some progress, and we hope that this will be intensified also by virtue of intensive political and diplomatic work by Armenian authorities or diaspora structures to resolve the matter. Without pressure, we see the process will be delayed for an enduring time, which is unacceptable.
Well, Siranush, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.